I'll call the North Smithfield School Committee meeting of January 23rd, 2024 to order. Clerk, please call the roll. Present.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
We have five present. We have a quorum. Let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have a treat tonight, and thank you everybody for coming. We have the presentation of certificates to all state music students. We can clap. And is Regina here?
Yes.
And so we'll do the presentation.
First of all, the Rhode Island Music Education Association holds an all-state audition every year and an all-state festival. These students that have been accepted to all-state had to prepare a required piece, and they basically competed against other top students in the state for a slot or a position in the choirs. There's 2 high school choirs, 2 middle school choirs. There is the high school orchestra, middle school orchestra, high school band, middle school band, as well as the high school and middle school jazz ensembles as well. So we have a great representation of students who worked really, really hard to receive this honor. So I thank you for taking the time to honor them tonight.
Thank you.
I'm going to apologize for any mispronunciations of names. I apologize. Anna Alesowitz. Grace Elishevitz. Chase Arsenault. Jasmine Bagouche. Brielle Balageron. Eden Beauregard. Amelia Boys. Emma Bryan.
So somebody get on.
Andrew Butler.
There we go.
Nicholas Carafel. Layla Chmielewski. Nathan Como. Lucas Como. Hayden Dalby. Ryan Dellinger. Ryan Denton. Nedayana Dien. Julia Dowling. Luke Fournier,
Luke gets nothing.
Victoria Freitas, Louis Garneau, Amani Grant, Claire Grant, Sophia Gregory, Adam Harrison, Haley Hoyle, Mariah Joyal, Madden Kiovansaveng, Ayan Khan, Olivia Labonte, Michaela LaFrance, Grace Lane, Samuel Lane, Layla Lanoy, Caden McDonald, Olivia Maggio, Madeline McNeil, Andrea Nunez, Ava O'Neill, Jaden Ortiz Allard, Angelina Parenti, Jada Para, Owen Priestley, Isabella Rawson, Mia Remicki, Stephen Scarpelli, Austin Sylvia, Zach Simpkins, Clover Slaughter, Kara Sneezik, Rachel Sneezik, Ava Soulier, Sophia Taborda, Cameron Welch, and Chloe Welch.
Well, thank you for everyone for coming and congratulations. You make us proud up here. Yeah.
So we'll recess for 5 minutes.
Fatima, you're gonna give those,
We're in recess.
you're gonna give the rest of the receipts.
All right, so unless there's an objection, Superintendent, you want us to jump to 6-1, Rhode Island Department of Behavioral Health here, 2024 RISS survey, presentation by Andrea Piva, approval per NSPS policy VA 20 student questionnaire, discussion vote or other action.
Yes, I'd just like to do a quick introduction to the
Yes, please.
survey, that it is going out statewide to middle and high school students. I want to emphasize, this is not the survey from last year. This is a different one. And, you know, there will be a full opt-out. All the questions will be provided for parents in advance. So, but Dr. Piver is administering this for Department of, you go ahead, URI and
Yeah.
something else very important and official.
Yes, yes. So I do administer it through the University of Rhode Island, but for BHDDH specifically. We are administering to every middle and high school in the state while seeking approval from all the school committees. And so this is a regular occurrence for me, but this is my town I live in, so I appreciate being here a little bit more. So we do obviously have superintendent and school committee approval, necessary, and then we work with the principals. As Mr. St. Jean mentioned, parents can be sent the survey so they can see all of the questions, which are substance use, some mental health. We did add this year some questions on cell phone, I don't want to say addiction, but basically cell phone use, and also some a few around gambling, because we're seeing a real rise with middle and high school students specifically around gambling on their phone, as well as 17, 18-year-olds being able to get into Bally's over at Twin River and being able to get in there. So we do have a few questions about gambling that have been added to it. And this has been done since 2016, every other year. We do have full opt-out where we send a Google form out through the school, sending it out. So it's not coming from us where they may not know who we are. But either the principal or superintendent can send that out along with the survey, and parents can opt out their students. And I collaborate on that Google form with the principal or whoever the contact person is at each school. So that way they are sure that those students are not completing it. It's online. It takes about one class period, really about 30 minutes. And yeah, so that's sort of the summary of it. The main reason for completing it is for grant funding. So North Smithfield Prevention works closely with the schools. I know there's been different presentations that have been done, that Pam Scher, who is the coordinator, and the Blackstone Valley Prevention, which is the region that includes Lincoln, North Smithfield, Woonsocket, Cumberland. So that can really fund any prevention work. You know, if a speaker comes in, I think the 8th graders just had a speaker. My daughter was talking about it after, come in and talk about substance use, bullying, all those types of things. And in addition, being able to provide any other supports and work with the student assistance counselors and people like that. So, so that data can help support that funding to continue and possibly create more grant funding. I know in 2020 I came, and right before COVID, you guys did approve it and we were going to administer it, but we did have a tough time doing it online from home with students. So we did not reach our threshold. So in order for the data to be even released at the school level, we need 60% of a grade to complete. So that way it's not, basing data on 20% of that particular grade or anything like that. So, yeah, so it's done online, but in the classroom. So, and it's anonymous. I'm assuming people may have questions and happy to answer everything. Sure.
So when you say grant funding, the grant funding goes to the behavioral health, does it come to the district?
So the way that it works is, BHDDH funds the local prevention coalitions and the regional coalition. So Pam shares funded through funds through them. So, then it comes to the district as far as her being able to work with her local coalition here, which I know various people are part of. They meet once a month and then they decide as a coalition and they work with, superintendent as well as health teachers and, others as to what sort of resources are brought in, whether that be speakers or if it's a evidence-based program that can be offered. I know I also coordinate a couple, Smithfield and North Providence myself, more on the grassroots side of it. So we can bring in, whatever we think is necessary. Like if there's a vaping issue, sometimes I've seen coalitions support vape detectors or policies around that, supporting smoke-free and vape-free parks and, obviously our fields, things like that. So coming together in that way. So that funding supports those kind of things. And often when the state, BHDDH, when they're writing their grants, in order to include local towns, they need data to show that there is some, risk or, perception of risk is low among students or use is higher, those kind of things. But they don't report it out on the town level. So everything reported at the state level is aggregated. But the school and the district can have access to your own data. So you will get a report that shows by grade what the substance use looks like, any of these other questions that are included.
And I believe if any student comes across a question that they're not comfortable with,
They can skip
the
any
ability is
question.
to just skip
All
forward.
questions are optional, and even though there's quite a few questions on there, say you never vaped. We do not ask the follow-up questions like, when did you first do this? All of those kind of questions. So it can be a little more limited, especially for, any students who haven't tried things or feel uncomfortable answering any of those questions.
So I struggle with the fact that we're here to teach academics and
Mhm.
yes, the whole child and everything else. Why is this not done through a pediatrician's office or a hospital or the emergency room? And I don't like the opt-out, I want opt-in, if
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah, so the reason why we really need to work with the entire, population of school is because if you go to a pediatrician or you go to a hospital, you're only getting a select group of people, number one, that frequent it, although I'm sure in North Smithfield, we probably have very high rates of going to pediatricians, but we do know that use is rampant and it's in every demographic. It's in every type of student. So I will turn off my hat for a second on that and talk on my parents' side. I have 4 kids. One is graduated from this district. He's 21. And then I have 3 students currently, a middle schooler and 2 high schoolers. Every time I do this, I get a little choked up. My family is very involved in prevention. Like we do things statewide. We do youth, we go to youth driven where we're trying to teach our kids to be safe behind the wheel, not drive distracted. The amount of substance use that my kids experience as being friends and very involved in this community makes it very difficult often for them as students who are choosing not to do those things. They're often wanting to help. I work with Amy Gravel a lot. We're often trying to get these groups of kids together to spread the word that not everybody is using, but we know that it is in all of the pockets here in North Smithfield. So we really feel like the data being collected and really being able to reflect the entire student body is important. I'm an educator myself. I teach full-time at URI, just came from a substance use class that I teach. I see the need for that as these students are growing. I hate taking away from academic time, the same way in my own classes, but I do think that it's correlated with academic performance and their ability to focus and study enough that taking that little bit of time to answer these questions for us so we can get some data and provide services back to the school, I think is really important. So as far as the opt-in, I will talk about that. We will never collect enough data if it's opt-in. We have tried that in a few districts across the state. Unfortunately, it's not even a matter of parents wanting to opt in. It's just that most of the time, their ability and, multitasking and being busy parents, they don't always return those forms. So because we have to reach that 60% threshold, very difficult if everyone has to opt in. Same thing. My kids used to always kid around when they'd be in elementary school and want to have popcorn. They'd be like, Mom, please, I have 4 kids. I'm super busy. Put it in the basket. They'd be like, no, if everybody doesn't turn this in, we can't have popcorn. Unfortunately, kids are not probably going to go to that length to say, please make sure I do this. And parents are busy. So we do really push that opt-out form out. Let them look at the questions, especially being local, happy to answer any questions that, are forwarded to me from parents or, Mr. St. Jean. And then having anybody who feels very strongly be able to opt their child out, I think is the way for us to be successful in both ways, really.
And I believe these will, if you were to approve it, it would be administered during the health class during that period.
Sure. Just direct more to the superintendent. Superintendent, so specifically, how are we gonna get the notices for the opt-out? It's gonna be mail or email or a combination?
Everything that we can. Yeah, so it may be, the principal will send out an email, we could schedule. I hate to use the phone calls. But, so mostly be emails and the principal's newsletters, electronically. If you want, I could make the phone calls. Again, I try to keep the calling system down to a minimum and really for emergencies.
I think we all, I don't wanna speak for everyone here, but at the board, we just wanna make sure that all the
Right.
responsible adults are
The
notified.
due
That's the
diligence.
bottom line.
Yeah. And as a parent myself, I appreciate that because there's been plenty of things that, whether it's me missing it, but I do feel like even seeing like the middle school, middle and high school here today, some of these announcements that are going out, I don't know if I'm more likely to look at them now because I'm,
Right.
paying attention, but I do think that those things are reaching parents.
Yeah, and something like this would have to be multiple announcements.
Yeah, multiple emails
We
about
set a
it.
date and there are multiple notices that go home with the opt-out form available.
If I may follow up, is all right. So if we're gonna, if, let's say a parent or responsible adult want to do an opt-out, would they be calling the school? Would they be, would they send?
It's just clicking on a link,
And
putting in
filling
your
out the
name, the
information.
kid's name, grade level.
Yeah, their grade,
I mean, we use the opt-out form for other things too,
Yeah.
and it's just who you are, the child's name, the child's grade, send.
And then I give that list too. So every school that I work with, I provide that prior to the administration dates. That way they have that list. And I also do like an extra reminder even the day before, just in case somebody's absent, as far as administration or anyone like that. So I work closely with that contact person at each school.
If I may.
Absolutely.
I am co-chair of the Wellness Committee,
Mhm.
and I also have a middle schooler and 2 high schoolers as grandchildren.
Mhm.
And I know just from listening to them, I know what you're talking
Mhm.
about. There is a lot out there that we're probably not even aware of, but the pockets are definitely there. And I think that all the information that we can gather in whatever way we can gather it just makes our school system better. And I'm all in favor of this. I think this is wonderful.
Thanks. I do think, from myself, as a parent, I'm not naive to the fact that even my own kids could be trying things. If somebody's watching on this, maybe somebody knows something I don't, because I know as a parent, it's really difficult for us to be everywhere. We do the best we can.
Mhm.
But one thing that I find really rewarding is when the school can collaborate on some of those things. So my daughter is in the 8th grade and she came home that they had this fact presentation, and obviously she's involved in other ways and she's been to a few things that we've done. But she came home and she actually had a lot to discuss about that presentation. And so I brought up I said, oh, was it this person? Like, because I really didn't know admittedly, I kind of just saw it was happening and I didn't look at the details. And once she connected one of the speakers to our previous football coach, they knew each other. She started to put that together and she started to realize that those were role models, you know, because she really liked Wes. He was our football coach prior. And just putting those connections together. And I know that those are the things that help students like in the 8th grade start to make those choices, because once they transfer to high school and they're, you know, more autonomy, I hope that those things, you know, build her. And so being able to offer those kind of presentations, or a student assistance counselor being able to turn to, or like an Amy Gravel who runs, and I'm only mentioning her, there's plenty of others, but you know, running these groups that are trying to get kids to do alternative things and be very involved, I think can help, you know, just can only help our students in many ways.
Well, I think that all the information you can gather in this day and age is necessary and very, very important.
Yes, and you know, like in some of the other communities, there's other things like evidence-based programs, like media literacy programs that teach kids how to digest media that is being thrown at them. So TikTok and all of this have influencers who are vaping and doing different things. So in some of the towns that I coordinate, we're doing that with middle schoolers. It's not in your face, drugs are bad, just say no from the 1980s. You know, it's like, it's very much like these ads are being targeted towards you as a kid, and how can you know, how can we do something about it? So any programs like that can eventually get in, hopefully some of this data can help prove like the need is there, and maybe even help parents understand, because I think a lot of us are naive to not my kid. Having as many kids as I have, I learned that the hard way. So I just, you know, I think that parents can also be educated with some of that information and that data to say, oh, maybe my kids are thinking alcohol is okay. You know, I'm a big believer in practice what you preach, and, you know, that how you show alcohol impacts your kid, even as an adult. So, you know, those are things also like working with parents to say, drinking is okay as an adult. You can do what you want, but how do you present that in front of your kids? And so I think some of this data that shows often that like alcohol perception of alcohol risk is really low. And it's because they see so much of it and think it's really good, right? That's our society overall. So I think some of the data that we can gather and give back at this level can help us make those decisions to educate parents. And instead of parents being afraid of some of this substance use stuff, like kind of embracing it and saying, I can be a change as well. So, right. And we can give some of that data back at that level, like, oh, the 8th graders, like this is what the use looks like. This is what perception of risk looks like. And then you guys can do what you want with that and say, oh, maybe we need to bring in someone else, maybe a parent, maybe parents would be helpful in this, because we want them to be part of it too, not just on the periphery.
And just out of curiosity, you're saying middle school, does that include the 5th and 6th graders?
No, so
Okay.
typically, every district is different. So we typically do 6th through 11th graders. 12th graders are kind of checked out by the end of, you know, this year. You know, that's where we're at. 6th grade is as low as we typically go. A lot of districts don't include 5th grade over at the middle school level. But you guys can also decide which grades you feel are appropriate. So obviously, I'm a statistician by training, so the more data, the better on my side. But, you know, if you feel more comfortable with certain grades being administered, that's totally your decision. So,
Thank you.
I just have some more questions.
Go ahead.
You want to follow up?
That was a question I had, because on the survey, it says, are you 10 or younger?
Yeah.
Where I have a grandson 8,
Mhm.
and I can't imagine in 2 years giving him this survey.
Yeah, we don't. And that I think I actually have adjusted that. So it's 12. It's 12 because most of the time it's 6th grade. So
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate what you're saying. I was on the juvenile hearing board
Yeah,
many
I
years
do the
ago
same thing
for
too.
like 12 years, chairperson. And there are a lot of parents who don't believe it's their child or whatever. But I also know the reaction that came out of this town 2 years ago.
and myself as well, completely.
Okay, so I'm not comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And that's why I feel like, yes, we're giving the survey here, but how is it actually benefiting our students
Mhm.
directly in this town?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can speak to is, the ability for us to be able to bring in supports and education and other things that sometimes are not being able to be funded through, more educational, obviously that's the primary focus of the schools is the education piece. So I'll speak, from some of the towns that I work in, and I know that Pam Share also does similar things. North Providence, Smithfield, where I work, sometimes they can't afford to have that speaker come in at prom time, right? And so last year I brought in a speaker that didn't just talk about don't drink and drive, don't, some of the kind of sensationalized things sometimes that can be brought in and it's like stays with students for a second. I did bring in a speaker who lost her daughter for her daughter had wandered, right? So it was like after homecoming, she had just wandered. She had been drinking. Her friends left her behind, and she actually drowned in a couple of inches of water in the woods. And the take home for that was, be there for your friends. Don't leave them behind, which is a little bit different than everybody thinks it's not going to be my kid that's in the car driving, So things like that, where that was the school decided what they needed and they weren't able to fund that through, any of their other programs. And so we were able to bring those kind of things in, more specifically, they felt, prom time is tough and we don't want to shock and, do that kind of like just negative scare tactic. Brought people in, that would be a little bit more.
So we actually have to
connected.
pay people to come and speak?
Oh, yes. So you'd be
So this
surprised
is
how
not out of the
expensive.
goodness of their heart.
Right. So part of that is a lot of parents who have lost loved ones, some of them do it for free. Maybe they partner or have a grant that they can do that with. Others travel nationwide to do this. We do have a lot of local here to Rhode Island. Unfortunately, many people have lost their own children here. And so they often use that to give back. So it's not always just, I'll say in quotes, like a moneymaker. Although there are plenty of people who this is now their passion and career to get that word out. But amazingly, until I worked in prevention, I always worked at URI and kind of did the behind the scenes grant stuff. I never realized that a speaker could be $5,000. I mean, I have a PhD and no one's paying me $5,000 an hour. So, so again, that's something as preventionists, we're also aware of who is worth having someone come in, who we're very data driven. So like we collect data often at these kind of presentations to see what are those kids taking home? Are they understanding it? Because as educators as well, we want to make sure that it's not just somebody, oh, I feel bad for a minute, and then it doesn't stick with them. So, there's a whole host of on the prevention side, trying to choose the right, work with the schools, who's a good connection, because not every person that might be good. I'm originally from Pawtucket. A speaker that might work really well with Pawtucket kids might not work with North Smithfield kids. And so we work with the schools to be able to do that. And I know Pam, in the past, over in the region I work in, we have some drug-free communities grants, which are like $125,000 a year to do all sorts of things, build that coalition. They want data. So if ever that's something that was on the horizon to apply for here, without data, they can't show the need. So, but yeah, so again, presentations, I'm only using presentations as an example, but we're really focused a lot on evidence-based stuff. So if, the health department feels they need, some sort of curriculum help, we can do that. We've done things like life skills and Project Alert, which are curriculum based and all show positive outcomes statistically. So it's not just kind of like throwing darts at it, trying to do that the right way. So.
Thank you.
So what have the organizations actually done for us, let's say over the last year? Have we had presentations here from these nonprofits?
So yes, I can't speak directly for that. Pam Share was going to come with me. She had a death in her family, so she couldn't be here, but I can provide you with all of that information as far as which pieces, are funded. One of the things is, a small town with grant funding through BHDDH only, it's still a limited amount of money, so I know she runs the coalition and I know she's offered various things, here, but I because I work with a lot of coalitions. I don't know exactly which ones were funded through her, so I wouldn't want to speak for that.
So just, I think my number one issue is privacy,
Yes.
is in use of the information. And so I know, so that you're taking the class or the survey on a computer.
Mhm.
I assume it's monitored, the room's monitored by teachers.
Yes.
Taking the survey. I don't know how that works, I guess, in my mind, do they, what happens if a child goes, "Oh, I don't want to do the survey?"
Yep.
Are they shamed into doing it? Are they-
Absolutely not.
I mean,
Yeah, so we are the complete opposite of that piece of it. So we are always looking for the students to have a voice, right? So that's, we're trying to get their voice in this way, but we also, if they do not want to participate, they do not have to participate. The way that it works is I work, so say we signed off on this, I would work with the principal who would give a contact person in the school. And then I have a proctor training, which is that all of the classroom teachers would be given this proctor guide and a little training on how to proctor it. So exactly what you were saying, everybody has their Chromebooks. Each school has their own link. So North Smithfield High School would have its own personal link that would be put on their Google Classroom or however they share it. Students click on that, they can sit down and do that. We do ask teachers to kind of be attentive, but not be looking at answers, right? So you're not walking around to see how anybody's answering, but we know that kids are kids, so you have to have some sort of order in the classroom. And yeah, if they don't want to do it, they can say they don't want to do it. Classroom teachers can't, they're actually told not to ever coerce them into doing that. One thing I found collecting data for many years, even separate from this, is if the kids aren't into it, they're not going to provide data that's even useful. So we always tell them, and I tell my own kids, I've said it since they were little, do not ever do a survey and just play around in the survey. You're making it hard for us as data collectors and analysts. You know, don't pretend, zigzag or say you're an alien, whatever you do, and so we're always encouraging teachers to be attentive, but yet understanding that, they're not going to make them do anything. And it's completely anonymous in that way. So they don't have to put any information in about them as far as anything they don't want to answer. And we have no way of tracking it. So the system I use even removes IP addresses. So I work with an institutional review board at URI on other projects. And at some point they had an issue in, a grant I was working on that I would be able to track back to that IP address. I said, well, I would have a different career if I knew how to do that. But understanding that that could be identifiable, I even turned that off in the survey. So we're not even collecting IP addresses. So, so we try to make it as secure as possible.
and that's,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So in the beginning, did you say when you collect this data,
Mhm.
is it per town or it all comes together?
Yep. So on my side, I collect for every school.
Mhm.
And then I aggregate everything for the state, which they do have identification of, like, this is from North Smithfield High School, there's a variable in there that talks about that. So they can analyze and create those reports for the school and for the district. So the middle school, the high school, and North Smithfield as a whole would get 3 different reports. So they would go to Mr. St. Jean, who then can do what he feels with that, bring it to you as a school committee, bring it to the principals. It's not something at that level that is published. You cannot Google and see the North Smithfield report anywhere. So it's not shared between districts. The only thing that's shared statewide is that aggregated statewide report that BHDBH pulls together that only includes, everybody put together. So like all by grade or whatever.
So that report only goes to the superintendent and then
And then-
he is the only one, so to speak, unless he then
Yes.
shares it with
Right.
the health teacher.
Well,
So as far as knowing we have a severe concern here, or
Exactly.
we don't,
Right. So
it
no,
kind of
no
falls
one else.
back on the superintendent.
Exactly. It's here, it's at this level, what you would like to do with it, because we do not feel like, that is not our job or not our intent in any way to go out there and say, oh, North Smithfield has this problem and this school has this problem. It's aggregated in that way. Now we do have access to it, like our prevention coalition will have access to it. So with the grant funds that we have, we can say, like, I know they just did a really large needs assessment just about a year and a half ago with all of the towns, and they could pinpoint at that region level, North Smithfield, we didn't have data included for 2022, but if that data was there, we could say, look, vaping is higher than alcohol use. So if we're going to bring somebody in, or if we're going to do an evidence-based program, we would use that, that as a tool for it. But it's not something that's shared anywhere else. Like you could never find it. You can't look on a website and find that level of data.
So you reach out to the district, say, I can offer you this with the results we've just given you,
Exactly. And
rather
so,
than him asking for it.
absolutely, right. So that's something that which it does take a little bit of time, so the administration window ends, I want to say end of May, but realistically it goes into the beginning of June, and then BHDDH gets all of that data. They will be aggregating, doing all the reporting. They even mask things at a level as well, even for the school. So let's say that only 5 students reported prescription drug use or something like that. That would just be an asterisk. It wouldn't have a number, because even at that level, they feel that you might be able to know, like, oh, there's 5 6th graders that did this, right? So they have, I think, a cut point of 10 students to even be included in that report. So, but yeah, so we reach out as coordinators, so Pam Share or myself, because I can have the ability to do that here. That would go without being asked for. So it wouldn't be something you'd have to hunt down. We do want you to have this data because we want you to use it as well. We want the school to use it, ask questions about it. If a grade does not reach that 60% threshold, they're not reported at all. So if we only got 40% of 9th graders, there would be no report for 9th. I mean, there would be no, bar on any of the charts for 9th graders for anything. So it's only those that reach 60% by grade. But yeah.
So I think, so if we know what's going on, what is this survey going to add? So we know there's vaping problems, we know there's drug use, we know that there's drinking. Shouldn't we be doing the programs?
I mean, I think it's a collaborative effort. I don't think that there's one entity, one sector that can solve it all. I think the reason for getting more data on it, I do think that parents need that. I think they need to, and that's something that if, the district wanted to share, could share, but they're not going to know it unless you guys share it. But I also think part of that is we also need to see if what we're doing is working. So we have had inconsistent data here in North Smithfield, so we didn't collect it. That we collected a little tiny bit in 2020. I think only like 1 grade even met the threshold. In other towns that I've worked in that have consistent data, we can say, are the prevention messages, those things that are being done, actually impacting, the actual use? So we know there's a rise in vaping. We know marijuana is legal and, becoming more popular. And so we want to see and track that over time, because if some of those things that we're doing are helping, we should see a decline or stability, right? So if we know that cannabis use is going up, then we would want to see that staying stable for a while. So having that data consistently would give us an idea of what's working, what's not working, what do we need more of.
Okay. And
Well, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
So if you pull North Smithfield out of it, and you look at other towns who have done this consistently,
Mhm.
and your programs that you've brought in, has it brought down the use?
So we have seen some decline. The state is looking at some of that data at the statewide level. I do know that the ability to get grants to do more of that helps when we have data. So,
But not a substantial.
well, they are,
Change.
yeah, I mean, I don't have all of the data because that's also a separate thing that they're working on with the 2022. So I don't know exactly, but I know that we do see positive impacts. as a statistician, I'm not gonna say, oh, we've definitely seen a steep decline. Partially due to the fact that substance use is on the rise. So I am a firm believer that seeing some stability is positive as well. So, but I don't know all of those. We do have a statewide report that has compared, and there are some declines on that. I'm happy to share that last report that they did. So, and I know they're also doing some analysis at the level of schools that have student assistance counselors versus schools that do not have student assistance counselors to see, and that has been shown that they've had more favorable outcomes when it comes to prevention. So I know that the state does have a couple of those reports, which I'd be happy to share.
Please.
In taking the survey, and I looked at a number of questions. I'd be shocked if those are filled out accurately.
So that is a number one thing that people ask me. So I've been a survey researcher for 23 years now, and self-report, everybody wants to think everyone's lying, or they're not being inaccurate when they're responding. We do find that there is an amazing amount of consistency across districts. So if students are lying, they're lying pretty similarly across all different districts. Also, the piece of it being anonymous, and I think kids are way more willing to share than we give them credit for. I know that a lot of kids might come off like they're cool and they don't want to, think about these things, but I think they're willing to share things. I think they're willing to share things with adults, and I think they're willing to be honest about this. Also, if you compare some of the rates with nationwide, they're pretty similar. So I think that if people are, students are lying or being, either too favorable or not saying enough, then it's pretty consistent with even nationwide. So because the state as a whole is pretty on target when it comes to some of this with the nation.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always some
I'm
variability.
doing a survey here. Peg's right next to me. We're doing the survey. Are you a drug user? I'm gonna put no, whether I am or not. I mean, I'm not the drug user, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna put no because I'm an athlete and I'm afraid that, that could hurt me. And then the person next to me can see the screen, or when you say anonymous on it, I mean, I get that you're blocking the IP. There's gotta be some way of tracking it back. I mean, some way, some
Yeah.
possibility, whatever, or
Pretty-
at least that's in my
It
mind.
really isn't.
All right, well, that's in my
If-
mind
if
as a
it
student,
helps,
that
Well,
it can be.
I also think that students are very comfortable with technology and all of the ins and outs of that piece of it. And I think they also are so used to seeing each other on devices, whether it be for good reasons, school, sitting there, or I can't drive home without all three of my kids being on some device, that I don't think that they're always like, I mean, looking.
And I could just add a couple of things. One is that with the IP addresses, they're dynamic IP addresses.
Yeah, so
They're
that would
given
mean
out
be-
every time you turn on your Chromebook, you get a new address. So
Yeah.
it doesn't trace.
So
back
even
to a
if I
single
could.
machine. The other thing is that the Chromebooks that we purchase are not the most expensive ones in the world with a wide viewing angle.
Yeah.
So you really have to be in front of it. You can't glance at it from the side or a distance.
So Superintendent, can you give an estimate of what the cost would be to replace these organizations that are helping us?
Well,
Look, I mean, are they bringing a speaker in once a year for $5,000?
well, actually, there's a number of things that we're ramping up at the school level. And yeah, these speakers do cost money, especially the really good ones, the nationally renowned ones. We are partnering with a organization called Kyle Cares at the high school, which is also connected to a number of sub-organizations, and they do have some really compelling speakers that can become available to us, can talk to our student athletes, for example. But you're right,
Yeah.
there's travel and there's a fee to it, and this organization will help subsidize some of that, but it doesn't cover the whole thing. I know we've used Blackstone Valley Prevention Coalition for the hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to
For a
mention
par,
is,
for a parent workshop.
yeah, so what I wanted to mention was, I brought up speakers, we're talking about speakers. Speakers is pretty low on the totem pole for me when it comes to,
Yeah.
to any of prevention. Ideally, and if I would just remove myself completely and just think like if I was, doing prevention for North Smithfield, the way that I work with Pam, who's doing that, I think being able to provide more evidence base here would be the best. So honestly, perfect world, we have data, we get a big drug-free communities grant. That's something that can't be replaced. There's no school system that would be able to put $125,000 into substance use and mental health alone without obviously some grants. So it's really multi-pronged when we think about it. So it might be a speaker, and that's great that they can come in. Like Mr. St. Jean just said, Pam comes in with a hidden in plain sight, which was advertised super well. I kept seeing it come across. I'm using some of the strategies to getting parents is really difficult. It's like one of the most challenging things to get parents to come to anything. Hidden in plain sight is a live virtual bedroom that they can go through and actually see some of the newer devices like vapes that look like a highlighter, all kinds of things. And we educate parents. We say to them, this isn't meant for you to go ransacking your kid's room, but if you're throwing some laundry in there or trying to traverse your kid's room and you see something, it might not be what it looks like. And so as a parent myself, that's always been helpful, right? I stay up on that because it's my job. But other parents I've spoken to are amazed when they see some of the new devices that are out there that are actually vapes. And those kind of things are provided. In addition to like Blackstone Valley, which is the regional, so North Smithfield's part of that, they offer things like mental health first aid training. I was over there once and I saw a few people, for a few staff from the school department who was doing like mental health first aid training, which I don't know if that's something that's done with faculty and staff here. But that is something that's evidence-based, being able to train all sorts of people in other towns that I work in that have larger grants. We've been able to have Bradley come in and train not only all the teachers, but support staff, all of those people that these kids are turning to when they're struggling with something. Alternative activities. So a long time ago when my son was in elementary school, I think Pam funded a chorus, something after school that was funded as an alternative activity, which is a separate piece of prevention, which is keeping kids busy. Now, we have a huge chorus program. It's amazing. Everybody always is amazed by that. My kids, my husband, lots of people are involved in sports. I know that we have amazing new athletic director that's been doing so many things. Those are all alternative activities. That's what keeps kids, doing the right thing and busy to have less downtime. But we're often trying to get other things like youth groups in. I have a friend who coordinates a really big youth group in East Providence. They actually got Coalition of the Year for the entire nation. They're doing all kinds of things. They're having their kids trained on teen mental health first aid. So when their friends turn to them struggling, they don't just say, I don't know what to do. They can talk to a trusted adult. My own daughter here, she's in the 8th grade. Talk about her a lot, I guess, but she is going to East Providence to be part of a group that is being trained for just that, being able to help their friends when it comes to mental health. It's called Better Together. She's gone to a couple of trainings. And the good thing is she can bring their goal, even though they're in East Providence, is to come back here and help their friends, right? And so that's something that all these different ideas are out there. And the more Pam can do, the more she can offer. So if we get more data, if she can get a new grant, she can apply for a different grant. Often BHDDH funds the region and only for specific towns. So let's say there was a big partnership for a success grant that was alcohol. They only included towns that had the data to show the need. And so many towns were left out of that completely because they couldn't even be included at the regional level because they don't have that data to back that up. And that comes with a whole host of other things. Prevention includes compliance checks, which are working with the police department to go in and check all the local retailers, send underage students in to try to purchase, and then actually have ramifications if they're selling to underage. So there are grants that do that. That's evidence-based. Working with retailers to make sure that they're tip certified, that they're carding, so prevention is so widespread, right? So sometimes we think it's just coming into the school and doing an education piece, but really we all have to come together. And that's what the coalition does, brings together the school, the police departments, across the board. And this kind of funding allows that, they allow that collaboration. I am always amazed. I was recently just waiting for a pizza and standing there, and I saw a couple of kids that I knew. They were going gung ho into this liquor store until Annie's mom was standing by the door, right? I was just waiting next door, and they weren't going in there, right? Now, I would love to stand at every liquor store. I'm very into no drinking, right? But we know that partnering with the police department to make sure that retailers aren't selling. And that's something that if a little grant comes up or a foundation grant is available, Pam does have that ability to use data that we know this stuff is happening. We ask access questions in the survey, which is if you've had something to drink or vape or whatever, where are you getting it from, right? Is it from your parents because they have it unlocked in your house? Friends, are you purchasing it somewhere? We don't specifically say which store, but if we know that most of these kids are getting it from retailers, we can try for a grant that can do more of those compliance checks. So that way those retailers are held responsible. And so when we talk about prevention and can other entities do this? Well, sure. The school is a great tool to be able to do a lot of stuff. But when you look at that big picture, I work 25 hours a week in a region. I could work 100 hours a week and we never do enough. It's amazing the amount of work and the collaboration needed, because parents can't always be there. So we hope that the parents' friends, our peers are helping, or the police department's watching, that the school's supporting it. And so this type of collaboration is at the root of that. And unfortunately, a lot of the funders, they just want to see the numbers, right? They want to see, if I'm going to give you money, you have to show me that there's some need. We can say, of course, everybody's vaping, but they want to see, and they want us to be able to see if that's impacting over time. Like you're asking what the change is, that is important. But I think prevention as a whole is often misunderstood because we're not always as visible as we can be, because this stuff does cost money, working with police departments, we pay overtime for officers to go out and survey some of these. I'm always amazed. I live right on Iron Mine. I go down to the gas station a lot. I walk right in there. The fact that it looks like a head shop, right? The first thing you see are bongs and all kinds of things. Drives me crazy that would be the first thing my kid would see if she went in there to get milk, right? So if you can get different types of grants, you can work on policies and say, maybe those pipes should be behind the counter so my kids aren't seeing that right away, because that is just normalizing it for them. Separately, they do things for the community. So we brought Narcan down to that gas station on 146 because there are quite a few people in there that I've run into that have had some substance misuse issues. And I see the clerk behind there struggling, because what if something happens? Somebody overdoses in there. I wouldn't want that on me. We brought Narcan. So that's something I personally did. I asked Pam, because I'm outside my region, can I drop them off as a citizen, here? And she said, of course, so there's also all those other kind of things that are more community-based that impact our kids, right? So my daughter's driving, she stops down there for gas. She goes in to pay for gas. It's just everywhere. And so that's our job, to keep that stuff. We can't hide it from them, but we can make it so it's not so, look at all of the substances is so important. Which is kind of the world we're getting to, billboards and everything else.
Several years ago, before COVID, Pam actually did get us some grant money, and we had an after-school exercise program that included talks on all sorts of prevention, and it was wonderful. It
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah, we try to work with the even like senior projects. Like my daughter is a senior and she's doing something dance related. And she was kind of cute because she said, this could be an alternative activity for some of these kids, being able to do that. So there's lots of stuff we can do for free and people can help, but some of those things, ultimately cost money and time or need staff, those kind of things. And I know Pam is always working hard to do that. And sometimes it's not as a parent because we don't have that much funding here. So she does the best she can with that funding, but everybody also has to be on board to bring in all of those, whatever it is. And I know sometimes we are skeptical and worry about, the impacts of it.
What?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say that I can't quite understand why we would not do this, because I think that the data collected is extremely important. Just as I say, being on the wellness committee, we need the data to see what the problems are and come up with solutions to solve those problems. I certainly understand your reticence, but I think that the positives that we gain from it are important. It's data that's necessary.
And I do think that you all have the ability to do what you want with that. It's not something that we want to use in any, or even accidentally put in anybody else's hands, So as a state, it's nice for North Smithfield to be included because, we're trying to do this statewide. We're trying to include everyone. But also, that information can be given to all of you, to the schools, whoever wants it and can utilize that. And, it's not just, obviously I'm a prevention advocate. So yes, I want more grants. I want all my friends in prevention to have jobs to do this. But the reason why I want that is because I see the impacts, I see my own kids and I see lots of other people struggling. And it's a huge effort for all of us to be part of.
So so if you can go back on the data issue again,
Mhm.
who owns the data or go through that with me in the sense of
Yep.
kids take the exam, it goes to a computer, that computer is controlled by what?
So I am the only one that has access to it.
So it goes to
it's-
you.
Yes.
Okay.
So I use a program called Qualtrics, which is a data collection.
Yeah.
So,
You don't have to get too
but
technical.
just,
I mean, I'm
just that piece. So
big-
it's not like me, I'm not using like Google Forms that, that kind of piece. Not that Google Forms is bad, but it
so
is
then
a
you
little
provide
bit.
it back to the town.
So I download
School.
all of the data
Yeah.
for the entire state. And then I give that to BHDDH. They have a analyst team, they then combine everything and analyze it and put it into reports then that's what's given back to us. So no one else has access to it.
Nobody else sells the data.
No, definitely
You
not.
control the data as much as you possibly can, other than for grant purposes or whatever, and then
Yes.
goes to someone else, but.
Yep.
Okay.
Once it goes to the state, they have it and they have a lot of checks and balances on their side as far as even the prevention coalitions they're not sent the raw data, they have to fill out like a special form to even get analyses done at any other level and the state does that for them. So it's not something that's like, oh, once this is out there, here, you can have it.
Just one more question. I think, this is just, I guess, my personal statement. Can you go back and through and review those questions one more time? And it may not, they may not agree with me. And just take a look at them, make sure they're absolutely necessary for where you need to get to.
Yes.
Because I just, some of the questions, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Which I can totally see that, especially not being as involved in it, that's always something.
Okay.
I develop questionnaires for a living as well. So, and there's definitely we had removed a couple of questions from previous administrations because we weren't reporting on them. So, so we did do that. Unfortunately, part of the reason why some of the things often that people think aren't necessary are because a lot of funding agencies want to see very specific core measures, which are access, perception of risk of, how risky do you think these substances are? What are some of the biggest predictors of substance use? Peer and parental disapproval. So when we talk about parental disapproval, if we think our parents are fine with drinking, then we're more likely to drink. So we know if that parental disapproval is really low, we can work with parents and say, you might be inadvertently giving out the idea that you think alcohol is acceptable. And so we often train parents and try to help them with communicating. Like as a parent, I used to always be afraid, like if I mention this, he's going to know more about this. No, I need to have those real conversations. My own kids know, my husband doesn't drink, I don't drink, I am part of prevention. That I also tell them, every parent shouldn't be like that. But as a parent, communicate that this is something that's safe for adults and not for kids. And so if we see that's low, we're able to work with parents and have them help their kids.
Thank you. And just, so I just want you to know, I mean, I know this information is useful, helpful. I just don't know if it's, we should be doing it, I guess is the question. And you might say, well, then who else does it? This is the best place to do it. And I get that, but we're in education and I'm not saying, do we then, should we be doing it internally rather than letting that information out? Those are all the questions that bounce off of
Completely
my head.
acceptable. That's why we go through RIDE at the start of this. So RIDE has approved it and they are supportive. They've sent out letters to superintendent and to the principals this year, letting them know that they are in support of this. And I know that other surveys that are done, it's unfortunate a couple of years ago that there was what happened with the YRBS, because I think that one is just as equally important in different ways. So as somebody who's supportive of this, I felt terrible a couple of years ago because my own kids should be able to give their voice, just like others think that they shouldn't, So, I think that piece of it is really important for us to keep in mind, that it has gone to RIDE and to other people who are obviously very supportive of the education piece and understands the ins and outs of what should and shouldn't be done in the school. So we do go there first to have their support.
And I'm 1,000% in support of children who want to do this.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not,
Yeah.
but I guess my concern is, again, that are children uncomfortable? Are they, again, why are we asking these questions? I'm
Mhm.
sure that's going to
Well, we-
generate, and
And
I'm
we
not,
do
I'm
explain-
just,
I'm just saying, we do try to explain that. So I know that our kids are very knowledgeable in so many things and many way more knowledgeable than I am. So that is something that's part of the proctoring. When we give it to them, we explain why we want to know this information. Like, we're not trying to rat you out to your coach. My husband's a coach here in
Right.
Smithfield. He knows a lot that a lot of parents don't know, and he is the #1 supporter to try to get kids to be doing the right thing. Not only so his team wins, but so his kids are safe, right? His own kids, and we have a lot of kids because they all love him, right? So that is one of the things that when we talk about this data, we tell the kids, we need it to hear it from you, because otherwise people make assumptions. So if you're telling us, we don't just assume no one's doing it or everyone's doing it. You can tell us what's happening so we can help you. And that's the goal, is to get them to be on board as well. Because I am a huge proponent that the kids need to be in the know, right? When I teach at URI, I walk in there, I'm like, I know you want a good grade, but I want to know from you what you need. And that's basically what these kids are telling us is what they need. So when they report some of these mental health things, maybe they're afraid to tell their parents, maybe they're afraid to tell someone else. And on an anonymous survey, they might say, you know what, I have been feeling this way. And so if we know enough of those kids are feeling down or having these thoughts, we can help them, and they don't have to report it in a much more outing way, to somebody. It gives them the privacy to do that.
One more.
Yeah.
As the chair was saying, I think in today's political climate, I think that if you're looking at a survey that is looking for drug use, alcohol use, those things, maybe on that first page of questions, it's not necessary to know gender, sexuality. Maybe that's not part of what you need
Mhm.
for this survey. I think those are probably things that parents are gonna say, no, I don't want you asking my eighth grader these questions.
Yeah, and I'm happy to discuss any of those questions if you think those are ones that would be pushed back by parents. The reality is those are not the key questions that we care about.
Right,
I'll
so
admit
that's why
that.
I'm
That-
thinking.
that's where we're
maybe
going
The
with.
the rationale behind that and the reason why they are asked is because we do know that certain subgroups of students are at higher risk. And sometimes, not only is there grant funding, but there's also just initiatives that can be geared towards a certain group. That's why they're asked, so that data can be examined in that way. And to see if females have higher rates, right? I always say I'm born and bred with women's lib over the years. My grandmother taught me well. And I tell all my college students, like, yay, women, we've caught up in so many ways, including substance use, including lots of things like that. So some of those things like gender, we do want to know, are we seeing a rise? Are we seeing females go up? Are we, those kind of things. I realize that we have more demographics now that a lot of people statewide, nationwide like to argue
Well,
about.
that's what I'm saying,
And
and I
so-
think that could be.
So if those are the
spot.
questions, yeah, I think if the sexual identity and the sexual orientation are the questions, we could discuss those, and if those need to be, we can actually disable
Removed.
those for our town, those couple of questions that may be real troublesome if that's a real sticking point.
I just think from that last time that it blew up,
Yeah,
those tend to be the questions that
yeah.
people were upset with.
Yeah, and that's something we can totally discuss here. It's not ever my first line of defense is saying, let's take those out, because I personally really believe that they're important. And understanding the data that way is important. But, if that's something that would make it so that this district would not be able to collect the data, we could disable those two questions. It's rare that we do that, but it is something that's completely possible. Thank you. I've been talking since 7:30 this morning. My husband would think I'm used to that, but my voice says otherwise.
So let me just ask, so what superintendent, what grades is this? Where, who is it
So,
going?
it's geared for 6 to 12. I don't know about 6. More comfortable with 7.
I have 8 to 12, but that was in my head, but I'm not going to.
Every district is completely different in there.
I was just going to say that I have a granddaughter who is in the 6th grade, very knowledgeable about what is going on, and you'd be surprised at the stories that I hear from her.
Oh,
So I
know.
would think that the 6th grade probably should be included.
And then that might be
That's-
something where more 6th grade parents opt their kids out and they end up not, not participating, but.
But I mean, that's just my opinion.
No,
But I wanted to ask you, if you have an opinion on the survey as a whole.
Oh, don't drag
sorry.
me into this. I still have,
Sorry.
shell shock from the youth risk behavior survey.
I'm sorry.
No, believe me, it's out there, it's prevalent. This data is not going to tell us something we don't already know. But the difference is it's backed by data as opposed to anecdotal. And there are times when grants or things may come around. They want numbers. They don't want people saying, oh yeah, it's a problem. So I personally wish the survey wasn't as long. I wish that it wasn't as divisive as far as administering it. And I am keenly aware of the sensitivities. Couple of the questions, yes. Again, and I just try to put myself into multiple people's mindsets. The data would be good. There will be people who may have some issues with some of the questions. I am comfortable with how anonymous it is. Comfortable that the data is secure, that it's not going to be used or target or pull out. You're not going to see an article in the journal bulletin that, oh, this survey shows that marijuana use is the highest in North Smithfield compared to every other community.
Yeah.
That's not, that's
we don't slice it
not
that
what
way.
it's going to be. So. But I'm also very sensitive of, there are other surveys, there are other initiatives within the district, and it's a lot of questions.
Yeah. And, it is all being completely online. There are a lot of skip patterns, so a lot of students
And
don't
I
see a
imagine
lot
there
of
would
that.
be a lot, because as I was reading through,
Yeah,
I started glazing over
Yeah,
and had
so
to
we
step
actually have
away
it-
and look back, and and if I were just taking it myself, I think after, again, ADD, whatever.
Yeah.
At some
well, we
point,
have
I'm
short
just gonna
attention
start
spans.
skipping.
So we do have it organized by substance. So if you look at the paper version,
Yeah.
it looks a little different just because it's hard to show all the skip patterns, but it's organized by substance. So if you say no to, ever using marijuana, then you're not asked any follow-up questions about that, except for perception of risk, because that doesn't, you don't have to use to think it's good or bad,
Right.
But there are a lot of questions that are skipped around, depending on your responses.
And I did appreciate as I'm going through, it doesn't ask it doesn't ask anything really intrusive or private about the household.
Correct. Yes, a
It
long time ago.
doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't
don't-
say,
Who's using, what people are
who's-
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really about the student, the experience and the perception.
Mhm.
And it really doesn't dig into the family part. of
Yeah.
things,
In
which is-
2016, we did have a couple questions like, I don't even know why they were in there. When I came on board, they were in there, about parents quarreling and some other things that I'm sure had some reason to be in there. But since we've taken those out years ago, because we realize they're not important in that,
Right.
in the association.
So, Gene, again, just throwing this out there, is there anything like 6 to 8 opt-in, 9 to 12 opt out, or do you? So the younger, you'd have to actually opt in for the younger kids and then opt out for the high school kids.
I would think that would make it a little bit more difficult. And you also had said with the opt-in,
Yeah.
just don't get the
I think
the
honestly,
response.
yeah, I think there were 2 districts last time that mandated opt-in, and we had like 15% opt-in. And I would like to say that parents really didn't want their kids to be part of it, but I think a lot of them just never got the notice that it was like, you have to say yes to this, So I think there's lots of factors.
Mhm.
I think if you do opt-in, you might as well not do it,
I'm
because
only
that's what
talking the
I've
younger,
seen.
I'm only
Right.
talking the younger
Through
kids.
eight.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, so, I mean, in that case, like, if you'd prefer, just to do the other grades, like 8th grade, and above, for that reason, then I'd say just opt in just to approve 8th through whatever, because I think the opt-in is kind of almost a waste of even the time that the school would spend trying to get that, it's not usually very productive, so. I mean, even, I'm sure with other things, opt-in is hard, for across the board, even like fun things, not surveys, so.
Well, if people feel 6th grade is not necessary, then I'm fine with that.
But I think that I agree with you. We can get useful information out of the 6th grade. I agree with you.
Absolutely.
And that's the only reason I'm saying if we were to opt in and parents, we blitzed it and we can get some kids. I just don't want a parent to come back and say, what are you doing asking my 6th grader these type
Yeah.
of questions?
I think the trouble too.
High school's totally different in
Yeah.
my mind. 8th grade,
Mm.
I'm sure there's a lot of problems in the 8th grade as well.
Yeah.
Or at least there have been.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing with opt-in as well is that we do have that bias with parents who think my kid's not doing this, no reason to ask them these questions. And sometimes we really don't know that, so we may get a very select group of people who opt their kids in, right? For one reason or the other, so. But I can
think-
see it both ways with that, with the
well-
grade, it's definitely difficult.
I think if the information goes out in as many different ways as we possibly can, and we make it very, very clear, which states right at the beginning of the questionnaire, that it's anonymous, they can stop anytime, they don't have to answer questions if they don't want to. If they're uncomfortable, don't answer. I think that's very, very clear.
Mhm.
And, so I would think that the parents have the option to opt out. And I think opting in is just going to make it, as you say, extremely difficult.
And then, you know, you always do run that risk that a parent will not see 5 communications or whatever. I mean,
But
even as a parent myself, I miss
it
plenty of
happens, yeah.
things. My kids get upset with me for missing something, you know. Thankfully, I got the chorus trip money in yesterday, you know, those kind of things. But, you know, that you always run that risk that a parent will not be made aware. But I guess that is, you know, the intent is to publicize it in as many ways as possible, so parents have that ability to opt their child out.
Is the survey attached to this option?
It would be sent
Opt-out.
out at the same time, so it's not like part of the Google form, but it's, other districts send it out with that. So, when Smithfield approved it a couple weeks ago, when I was there, the school committee asked to make sure that, you know, the principal or whoever sends out the survey as well as the opt-out at the same time, you know, so it's in the same communication. And that, of course, is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that, you know, we want, well, I mean, we want to be as informative as possible to the parents.
Mhm.
And that's obviously through the superintendent. So that
Yeah.
would be predicated on my vote is to move forward.
Yeah, I would make sure that
At
they.
least mine would be for you to review the questions again.
Mhm.
But I don't want to be the one to say yes or no, just asking you to do that.
Yeah, all valid questions. And I have to say that I appreciate all of these questions because as a parent in a district, I would hope that everyone's being this rigorous around everything that my kids are experiencing. And so I do appreciate that. I know sometimes towns sign off real quickly because they just, you know they need that data or they have whatever belief, but I appreciate these questions. I feel a little bit like I just gave my dissertation again, but you know, I'm happy to be able to be part of this. And here being in North Smithfield, I grew up in Pawtucket, moved my kids here for a reason. You know, I felt like they were going to have a better opportunity here than I probably did there with a lot of risks around us. One thing I was really amazed by is the fact that this is really everywhere. Substance use is everywhere. And as a parent, as a community member, I see it. And so I think back in the day, I would think, oh, you know, when I chose to live here, that was the reason, you know, to have a little bit different environment than what I grew up in, my husband grew up in. But I'm starting to see my girls dance in Pawtucket and they live here. And I see all of the same things, no matter who their friends are. And I love being part of this community. I often get frustrated because I want to do more here and I do so much in other communities. But I appreciate all these questions because I want people that are in charge of my kids, you know, to be aware and know and not just take it at face value that something's good. I do know that some of my peers can be incredibly difficult when it comes to, you know, their opinions on different things. We all feel passionate about stuff. I think that's one thing that will always come across with me is that prevention is important. You know, substance use, both in your family as well as with your kids, is just, it impacts your entire life, right? I'm 45. My mom's drinking still impacts me, and it's been a long time. So that's something I think if we can impact our kids in the slightest way or give that kid that needs a little bit of extra help, a little extra help, that's why we're here. And as educators, I appreciate that. And as preventionists, I think we work together to do that, you know, so I thank you for the questions that you
Just for
had.
the record, we appreciate, the whole board
Yeah,
appreciates
and
you
I know none of
doing
it is.
this.
I know none of it is personal. I
it-
understand all
I
the
mean-
questions. Yeah, and I totally see it. You know, I see a lot of the pieces of it. It's a difficult thing because when you're deciding for other people, it's really hard, you know. And I do think that we come from a history of kind of divorcing some of our social issues from our education. Firsthand as a college professor, I deal with more social issues than I do education issues. I teach this semester, I have 350 students. It's the second day of the semester, and I've had 5 students already opening up about family, you know, substance use, not coming to class because of an issue. So it's pervasive and it goes on beyond here, you know, where they choose to go to school, you know, and so I think that's part of my passion for that is that I see it at so many different levels, you know, it's very difficult. And I don't want to overstretch and say, oh, this little bit of data is going to like when 20 years ago, very green, very trying to be save the world. But I know it can make an impact and we can together do that. So that's why I always like us to hear all the pieces of it, you know, because I think we can be very narrow in our decisions sometimes because we're worried that we're making the wrong choice.
Okay, thank you. Does somebody want to make a motion? How do you want to do this? You wanna continue
if I may?
debate? Uh,
I would like to.
yeah.
I just want to say,
Oh. No, don't say that. I'm sorry.
respectfully, I would like to recuse myself from this vote.
So you're gonna say something, and then I have to say, wait, wait.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we, well, actually, is there any more discussion or are we looking for a motion? Is there open for motion?
I think we're open for a motion.
I'll
Want
make,
to continue to discuss? Well, we can continue to discuss after.
I guess the motion, and if we want to adjust it,
You can ask to change it.
okay, and
Okay.
just to put everything on the table, on the table, I'll make a motion that we authorize and approve the pursuant to our policy, Smithfield policy VA 20 student questionnaires. We approve the 2024 RISS survey as presented to us. And just for the sake of discussion, I'll say for grade 6 on up, just to start. My thinking maybe we can then address each grade or I can modify that.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded. Discussion.
I guess it's a matter of 6th grade versus 8th grade. I'm more comfortable with the 8th grade, starting at 8th grade.
And I agree with that.
And again, I feel like that first page of questions, that could be modified. I mean, one of the questions, number 6, is your zip code.
So actually,
Which
we have actually taken
Makes
that
no
out.
sense.
I apologize that was actually taken out. Since it was approved by RIDE, we decided to take that out because we don't ever do anything with it at that level. It was just something that had been left in.
Okay.
And many communities only have one. I know we have a couple here and that could narrow things down, but
Okay.
that's actually not included, so.
And I know we discussed, you know, parents and their comfort level. And I think possibly 4 through 8, I don't know if they need to be there. If it's about substance abuse and feeling safe in school, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so that is something that they analyze more, like I mentioned, just to be able to, you know, look at subgroups and see if those needs are there and if special grants are, you know, or special programs are needed for certain
But
kids
you
that
need 60% in order to reach that.
at the grade level, at the grade. Yeah. So I know the sexual orientation, the sexual and the
Well,
gender
number
identity.
3 is gender. Number 4 is, how do you describe yourself?
Yep.
Transgender. 5 is heterosexual, gay or lesbian, not sure. Then the zip code, then what is your race? And are you Hispanic or Latino is
Yes.
number 8.
So race and ethnicity, we do not disable because that is something for national reporting, they're required. But
That's fine.
4 and 5, you know, that's different and zip code is already excluded. Yeah, so I mean, obviously gender itself, we would keep as well, but
Right.
the 2 in between, if you feel more comfortable with us disabling that, we can.
I think
From a
parents would be
parent
more
perspective,
comfortable.
right?
I think that they would not, that is
A
question
sticking
4 and
point.
5, they're gonna say, hold up.
Yeah, like why do you?
Now
need to
you're
know this?
bringing something into the school that shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think that opens up a whole nother, we could have hours and hours of discussion about that. So, you know, I think if that's something that parents would particularly be, you know, held back by, that's something that we can disable those
I think
too.
when you're looking for,
Yeah, not everyone will understand those connections. Yeah.
exactly, when you're looking for drug or alcohol, or
Mhm.
can you talk to a counselor at school and you're,
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll be comfortable that that's part of it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we're kind of in the process of making people more comfortable with those things, but if we're not
Yeah,
there
I
yet, I
agree.
completely agree, you know, that that's something that I'd rather have parents feel comfortable in that realm. And I can see where those are newer things that we're just making some headway on, so.
So we're between 6 and 8 on the survey. What do you want to
I'm at 8.
And I'm comfortable with whatever because I can kind of sense how this is going. And I'm comfortable with whatever because I think whatever information we can get is going to be helpful.
Yep,
So
I agree.
if eighth grade is the decision, that's fine with me.
And there, yep, I mean,
So will you amend your motion? to
Yes,
8?
yes, Mr. Chair, I will amend the motion to, that I previously made, but striking out from the 6th grade up and putting in its place from the 8th grade and up.
Is that okay for a second?
I'll second that, yes.
Any further discussion? Yes. 8 to 12.
And up, 8 to 12.
Oh, 8 to what?
Whatever we,
yeah, I mean,
whatever we
quite
do.
frankly, a lot of schools often don't meet the threshold for the 12th graders, depending on when the school administers. So that is something that the school, depending on their calendar, decides on the administration date. And the further you get into April and May, I'd love to say my 12th grader would definitely do it because she's very compliant, but I know that they've checked out. So often we don't meet that threshold. So if we did 8 through 11, it might take some burden off of some of those classrooms doing that and, you know, worrying about that grade if we might not meet it. Again, I love all the data I can get, but I have a feeling 12th grade
Okay,
often is
okay.
checked out.
Is that okay? Is that okay for a second? All right. So it's amended to 8, the motion is 8 to 11. Okay. I think I can just, well, do you want a roll call? Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Recused.
recused.
No, let her-
No,
Are we going to discuss the questions, Sue, or just?
That's up to you. So I think, and again, you may want to go the other way. I think that we have an agreement on the questions, but if you say, no, I want all the questions, then
No, I didn't know if we need to do a motion on those.
Oh, on the
questions, but-
removal of the two
Oh,
So
questions.
what we're gonna
Yeah.
do
if
is,
you,
If that's part, I don't know.
if you
that's
would
part of it.
adjust it to remove some of the questions, then I'm a yes.
I-
Oh, yes. So if I remove those two questions. And
Or
zip code,
4 through 6.
Yeah.
4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6. 6 is, you said a zip code.
Zip code.
Okay, yeah, so that, I was assuming that that's what you were voting on,
Okay, well,
including that.
It wasn't part of.
Oh, okay, the
so I
motion.
Wasn't sure.
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think we addressed the question numbers
Okay.
in the motion, we just said a survey.
so if the motion included the removal of the two, then your vote would be different. Possibly.
you want to make a separate motion? Or-
Well, if I could make a motion to do grades 8 through,
11, that's
11.
already been passed.
make sure we send the survey with the opt-out.
Mhm.
The survey has to be attached and remove questions 4, 5, and 6.
That's so the motion is to, in addition to 8 through 11,
Remove
remove
questions 4, 5, and 6.
and the
And be sure the survey is attached to every notification for parents to opt out.
that's a motion. Is there a second? I'll second. Discussion.
I
Just-
prefer to keep the questions in, and let people opt out of it, but if it'll help move the process along, I'm willing to go along with this motion, support this motion.
So I thought as part of my vote, there was already an agreement that you were going to remove
Remove
them,
them.
but,
That's
but,
what's-
but
that's fine.
I'm
No, it
not
wasn't in the
overstepping my
motion,
bounds.
but-
No, I just wanted to say that
I
because
don't-
I thought it was a little unclear what we had. We want to make sure we
Yeah.
know we're on the same page.
Yeah,
I will go with
And-
either one.
And if we're not on the same page, then let's continue, we can continue this matter too. I thought that it kind of had to be done tonight, but I didn't ask. But we're 99% there, so let's,
Yeah.
I guess we'll
Yeah.
keep moving. But if anybody wants more time, please let me know.
Mhm.
So there's a motion, a
Motion and a
second,
second, yeah.
and a second. Is there any further discussion? I'll roll call it, and that's to opt out and add in, and remove the 3 questions.
And send the survey with the.
Yes.
and
Send the
send
survey.
with, yeah.
And what I can also do in the Google form, which I didn't think of before this, is that I can put a link to the survey as well, so it can be attached. And I can put a link in the Google form that, so if parents want to click on that, might be even easier, but both things could
Which
happen.
is standard what we do when we
Yeah.
send out our. book, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
so I can always add that in. It's not something that I've done previously, but easy enough.
Madam Clerk, can you roll call it, please? Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
And note, Ms. Potter is recusing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I
Sorry.
appreciate it.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
This
This is-
position.
It's my job and it's also something I think is important. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
You as well.
All right, well, let's go back. So we did, going back to one public comment and community comment, I think we filibustered everybody.
yeah.
So, nobody's here, right?
No.
Online, anybody? No, and we don't take. Oh. Well, I think you have. Move on to the consent agenda. All right, anybody have any questions or concerns about the consent agenda? Anybody want to remove anything? Hearing,
I just want to make one point. We
Sure,
did get a
sure.
presentation of some of us heard at one of our early meetings about the athletic uniforms, and this is going to help us catch up with, catch up on some of the uniform shortages in certain teams we have. So, this was a good thing for us to get to.
Great.
And they showed us the quality of the uniforms and the vendors, and just that the presentation was very good, and that we have some, very explain why we're doing this, and I think it's going to be uniforms that'll be in good shape and will last for a while. And Terry, I know you would. I think I don't want to speak for you, but I thought you felt the same way.
Yes, definitely. It's time to kind of catch up.
I think we need our athletes to know that we are proud of them and they can present themselves and present North Smithfield well with uniforms that are not 23 years old.
And I think our athletic director did a nice job of
Yes.
giving us option, showing different options they had looked at and picking, like, so it wasn't just take it or leave it. It was, we looked at options and why something, and it was able to explain why things were the best options. So again, I think Terry and I both thought it was very well presented.
Yeah, and Mrs. Bean went through, did a lot of the designing for the new uniforms, worked with the company, and you approve this tonight, she can order tomorrow and hit the 20% discount,
Mhm.
which
Before
was,
the deadline.
which is very time sensitive. So,
Great.
and there was a moment of panic when we pushed the school committee meeting from last week to this week, but I had to make sure that we're still good. So,
It will be good to put this to bed. We've been nickel and diming this for years. And so this is a good move. Thank you.
Great. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to report superintendent.
just 2 very quick things, points of information. I will have a public PFAS notice that will be going out as far as the well 1 and well 2. What I want to tell you, though, is that the adjustments we made between the 2 wells have been very effective.
Okay.
And what is coming into the school is under the 20 parts per trillion. All right, it's the 18. Right, so it's well within it. We're going to improve it. We do have another well testing coming up for the end of this month. next school committee meeting, we're going to be presenting to you you have to vote on a consent agreement that our attorneys are working with right now with the Department of Health, and our consultants for the remediation, which is going to put in some timelines and a number of other things that will give everybody a much clearer picture. But once the consent agreement is in place, then we can move forward with the engineering, with the remediation. We don't know what form it's going to take yet, but right now, what we can tell you is that the short term, adjusting the flow between well 1 and well 2 is bringing it below the 20 parts per trillion. So there's not a problem with the water.
Good.
Okay. And the other piece of information is I can't share too much, but there will be a press release coming out Thursday. And there is an event being hosted by the Department of Ed and the state at the elementary school. The reason why NSES has been chosen is because it was out in front of something. I met with the media people today and I said, what can I share to the school committee? And it's not quite a non-disclosure agreement, but I can't tell you too much. But our elementary school, and again, I hate to talk about surveys after we've just talked about surveys. Last year's survey works, NSES outperformed pretty much the entire state for outreach and compliance and people taking the test, taking the survey, which I just want to say is a tremendous asset data-wise for us. In fact, SurveyWorks data form the foundation of our strategic plans and school improvement plans. And it is also been mandated as a state law. So there'll be an opt-out. All right, but it's a state law to give this survey. It's
Great.
just wonderful, wonderful information. But the Department of Ed is going to do a soft launch of it, and they've chosen the elementary school as the place to do it. So there'll be, I can't say who will be there, but there will be things in the press release. And obviously, you're all going to be invited. You can make it.
Great, thank you.
Super.
Well said, Superintendent?
Yes.
So moving on to item number 4, informational purposes. Anybody have any questions or concerns? Moving on to item number 5. Let's start with the fiscal year. I was going to say, how does the fiscal year 24 budget look? But we're kind of early in the seasons. Moving on to 25, which is the presentation of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget.
Yeah, I don't think anybody needs a presentation.
No, let me,
So,
well,
just gonna
explain
share
the-
some good information that would makes an adjustment.
explain the travel of it, please. So went to the subcommittee reviewed it.
Yes. So the presentation part I actually gave at the joint town council school committee meeting. And then we met with the budget subcommittee, our own, and went into great detail throughout the entire budget. And so,
Did they ask good questions?
yes, and
Extremely good.
they were amazing questions. I remember it being one of the longest meetings because I think I had a number of kidney stones, which, by
Yeah.
the way, I did pass last week.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm
I was
just
gonna
sharing this
ask
to
you.
YouTube and everybody else. So,
TMI.
so, no, the good news though is that when we put the budget together, when we presented to the town, when we, your budget books, that was before the governor's recommended budget. So with, and again, I don't know what the General Assembly will pass, but this is good news because we stand to have an increase of $361,953 over last year. Which means, and as we said, that, we were originally asking for a 3.91% increase pound, but you take out this adjustment to state aid to education. Now it's a 2.36% increase. And again, we still are going to, as the year goes on, still have adjustments to actual, still have other changes. And, we want to bring this down as low as we can while still being able to function. So, I guess the question is that we can adjust before we send it on to the town. We can adjust the budget books and the executive summary to include the governor's recommended budget, with the understanding that things can still change. But we're just trying to project out as best as we can.
In recent memory, though, the legislature hasn't gone below the governor, have they? I mean, in recent times, I don't recall it ever happening.
Not huge.
Yeah, no, right.
I mean,
So I think I'm comfortable
Mhm.
with that.
and Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I just want to add, again, we had a good committee there. The budget book has like 13, basically 13 basic, or the number of large areas, and we went through each one, like, and talked about each one. And I thought the staff had a very good, response and summary for it. And one of the things that we're gonna try to emphasize too or we're thinking about emphasizing when we meet with the budget committee is we are tapping into our surplus to take care of some things that would be one aspect deals. And we're gonna mention how the fact that, yes, ESSER funds this is our last year of ESSER funds. So we are going into the surplus, and that this is an investment in the future. And I mean, it always is, but we think that we have some very tangible points to bring out as to why, what people are getting for their investment. So the fact that we're going we're going down from 3.91 to 2.36 just makes it that much better, in terms of the approach for the budget committee and the council. So those are just my thoughts. But I thought we went through each area, and the committee was the staff was very well versed and were able to answer all our questions.
And I think once again, the budget book, very clear, very well put together. So thank you for that.
I mean, the town may or may not, they may have questions, but I mean, it's transparent. It's all there. It's really all there and easy to follow. And again, I'm going to emphasize, we go in front of them talking about what we are taking. We're using the final ESSER funds, which are then going away. We are using from our surplus. I think those are important points to make. And great.
So Lisa, I know you need a specific motion, right?
Yeah, so the
Oh.
question is, you
Oh.
want to present it as is, or you want to use it to the 2.36%. I just want to mention that in March, the calculator will be, the formula will be recalculated once they receive new enrollments for this year. So it'll change in March, and then we'll get the final in June.
You expect it to go down?
So one of the things that they pull from us in March is updated enrollments. And one of the reasons we went up is because our enrollment has increased.
Right.
We're still increasing. And then the other one we received in the recommended budget, 44,000 for non-public transportation offsets. And we also received another $15,000 for multilingual learners because that population is increasing. I mean, so collectively, it's the 361,000. There may be some other adjustments in there. And again, we're still gaining students. In fact, I was over at NSES today, and there's a family of 4, which is just in the process of registering.
My thought on it, My thought, Chair, Mr. May,
Yeah.
if we certainly want to be transparent and accurate, but if we can reasonably anticipating what's going to happen, in good faith, send that to, as a 2.36 number as opposed to 3.91, that's a win. I was thinking about a lot going
Yeah.
into the that 3.91 is a hard sell, or it's a challenge.
And my concern is that the budget information went into the packet is available publicly, and I really hate to see in the Valley Breeze that we're asking for
Right.
nearly 4% when
Correct.
tonight we're discussing lowering that. So,
That's the nature of the budget process, though. Yeah, people, we can explain that way have to. It's the nature of deadlines in Rhode Island. It's been discussed an awful lot.
So we'll say as amended, so we'll add it in. So you have the motion, or you gave a specific number or something, right?
So you would approve the proposed budget to be submitted to the town in the amount of $30,269,092.
Do we say the budget committee? Do we send it to the budget committee first or to the town or?
Budget committee, town council, the finance director, and the town.
You want that to be in the motion? Usually I think we do it. No?
Sure.
You have that, Fatima? Okay, so does somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second,
And seconded. Is there any further discussion?
And this version that's going in is going to it's going to show the 2.336.
Correct.
2.36%
Yeah.
increase in the town appropriation.
Absolutely.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to 6.2. What is it?
No, we've done one. We still have to do. I'm sorry, you're right. 6.2, right? My bad.
6.2, chair appointments to the NSTA negotiating team. I'd like to appoint Ms. Bartamoli, Ms. Johannes, and myself to that team. Is that okay? Anybody have any? Okay, great, thank you. And we'll report back as soon as we can. Any further business? I didn't miss anything, huh? We bounced around a little bit.
Sorry.
I'll
No, I think we got it all.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned.